As Talia would say,
if at first you don't succeed, throw another rock!
But maybe for next time, aim better and don't throw the game as well. Welcome back to another ProGuides Teamfight Tactics video, where today we're going over champions, strategies, items, and general things you want to avoid in teamfight tactics. Ranked is finally coming out tomorrow, yes! So it'll be a good idea to keep in mind what things you should avoid. But first, I'd like to remind you to click on the link below and take a look at the updated ProGuides.com if you want to learn more about teamfight tactics. ProGuides will always have info on the newest patches, best builds, and strategies. There are all kinds of different resources from top players to help you be the best player that you can be, so be sure to check out ProGuides.com using the link in the description. Alright, let's get right back into the video. Let's start this guide off with strategies you want to avoid. These are common mistakes players make. These simple mistakes can cost you the entire game without you noticing, so try to avoid them. First up is leveling when behind. If you're missing a lot of upgrades and weaker than most people, you usually never level up. This only usually applies past level 6, since you use a lot more gold to level and you take a lot less damage in the early game. While getting that next unit can be important and getting a higher chance at 4 or 5 costs can be great, you want to make sure you roll to keep yourself strong. For example, you'd be better off rolling for a strong level 7 team as opposed to going for level 8 only having about 10 or 20 gold to roll, and most likely taking too much damage before you stabilize. As the game progresses, it becomes a lot riskier to take huge losses, as damage starts to rack up pretty quickly. Always pay attention to how strong everyone else is, and use that to decide when you want to roll. Going to our next error, it's when you're stuck between two strategies. If you're stuck with a ton of pairs, you hold a lot of gold on your bench. You want to commit to a strategy. How exactly do you commit to a strategy? Firstly, scout around. What synergy would be stronger against certain comps? If you're planning for either Ocean Warden Summoners or Poison Rangers, maybe you'd want to go Wardens if there's a lot of physical damage teams instead of Poison Rangers if you're facing spellcasting compositions. It can also be dependent on what unit you're looking for. Poison Rangers might be better, but if you're level 6 and don't have that much gold to roll at level 8, then maybe transitioning to another team might be better, rather than waiting and hoping you roll Singed. You also want to pay attention to what team you have more units for, and have an easier time committing to. Finally, play around the items you have. If you have a Rageblade, Bloodthirster, and an Infinity Edge, maybe Olaf would be better to go for. If you have Seraphs, maybe focus on getting a Kindred Hyper Carry team. There are a lot of factors to think about before committing to a team, but the faster you commit, the more gold you start snowballing early on. And the last strategy you should avoid is not being greedy. If you have a huge lead already, then be greedy. If you want to play aggressive to keep your win streak, then roll aggressively, as long as it doesn't destroy your economy. If you have a ton of health and a strong team, you can just build up a ton of gold and power to level 8. If you high roll, use it to your advantage. Level up a lot. Go for 3 stars. You want to play greedy when you can. It makes it more likely for you to place better. You can also play greedy if you're average strength too, but it can be a bit riskier since it's always possible for people to become a lot stronger than you very quickly. Greed's payout is normally high, unless you're next level and want a 3-star your Olaf or Singed. Greed is good, but maybe not that greedy. So those are some strategies to avoid, but let's talk about the items you should stay away from now. On top of our list is Warden Mail. This item is pretty bad. Okay, it's somewhat decent if you get it as a completed item, but sacrificing a spatula to get an armor bonus is usually pretty bad. The only time it'd be viable is if your entire lobby is physical damage, which is super unlikely. Warden Mail could be used for like making Mage Lux, Lights Zed, or Inferno Singed, combinations that are a lot stronger and far more valuable than bonus armor. Speaking of spatula items, Youmuu's Ghostblade. This item is pretty awkward to run, with the assassin bonus not being that great, and most champions not synergizing well with it. In set 1, units like Kennen, Gnar, or Kassadin could use it in combination with their AoE. However, there aren't really many champions like that in the game. There's attack damage carries like Olaf or Twitch, but Twitch is better off not standing behind the enemy team. Olaf is also somewhat decent with it, but there are much better items to put on him rather than an item that improves crit damage. Moving on, we have Thornmail, which is a generally underwhelming item and typically not worth it most of the time. This item only really works on Wardens, with them having the most armor. Braum specifically works the best, with his shield synergizing well with Thornmail. However, you generally want to avoid this item otherwise. If you're fighting against magic damage items, Thornmail becomes mostly a waste. If you want a defensive armor item, Iceborne Gauntlet is a bit more effective with champions like Jax. There's also Wind Map and Synergy that works extremely well with it as well. However, this item is receiving a nerf soon, so it might see less play in the future. Lastly, we have repeated crossbow. They're only somewhat decent in summoners because the crossbow can jump onto summons, providing an extra attack. This item in general is extremely weak, as the stacks not being that great most of the time. Rage Blade is a lot more consistent for carries, provides good stats, and also synergizes well with mages as well, in comparison to repeated crossbow giving crit chance. Repeated crossbow also means your hyper carry has to have an open slot to pick it up as well. Why not just use another item? Now we're going to review champions you should avoid and why they're weak. These are not champions you should never buy. If you find them as a pair or needing an upgrade, then they can be okay. However, these are units you should typically not play around or focus on keeping in your team. We also will discuss in cases where they are okay to run as well. Time for horns. Let's talk about Ornn. Yep, Ornn is one of the worst champions in the game. While he does have the Exodia synergy of hitting 3 or 4 electric with Gunblade, this is far too inconsistent and generally more of a meme strategy. We're not saying it doesn't work, but depending on rolling Zed to hit your core synergy is never a good idea. Wardens are just generally kinda bad as well. As mentioned before with Taric, they get countered by Desert and is just generally an underwhelming synergy. Ornn's ability also sucks a lot. The damage is low and its only benefit is providing 20% bonus crit chance. It is just generally very weak. You can run him if you 2-star him early on, but he's easily replaced by so many other units. Let's continue this list with LeBlanc. As a unit, she's somewhat decent, but she's awkward for multiple reasons. LeBlanc gets outshined by Nico, Maokai, and Ivern in Woodland. Every other mage besides Talia in mages. Every other assassin in assassins. While she can help you hit some synergies, she's usually the worst pick in all 3 synergies, and doesn't quite benefit from them either. She is a spellcaster, so assassins doesn't do much, mages doesn't do much because of her ultimate being random and single target, and you'll want to copy other forest units over her. There might be changes for her being stronger in forest with upcoming nerfs to Maokai and Ivern, but it depends on the severity of nerfs. Talia is one of the worst champions in the game. Even though she can provide early mountains with Kiana in a mountain map, her damage is weak, her stats are bad, and she doesn't benefit off mage bonus that well in comparison to a Brand, Syndra, or even Vlad. Mountain also scales poorly as the game goes on, which makes it awkward since in 75% of your games, you have to depend on high-rolling Malphite early on. Next patch, Talia and Malphite will be receiving buffs, so she might be more competitive. However, she's a unit that's alright to pick up for an early 2-star, but should be replaced in most circumstances later on. The only late game composition she might fit in is 6 mages, 4 oceans, 2 mountain build with all mages, Malphite, Thresh, and Nautilus. Taric is receiving buffs soon, so his current state as a bad champion might change. He seems like a champion that would be generally strong. His ultimate, after a small delay, makes allies around him invulnerable for a short amount of time. However, he comes off as one of the worst champions for multiple reasons. Firstly, he faces a lot of counters. With his total mana pool being so high, poison makes it so he rarely gets his ultimate off, or not at all. He's extremely prone to silence for the time it takes to get his ultimate as well, so units like Soraka or items like Hush can shut him down extremely hard. Secondly, Taric's synergies are underwhelming. On paper, it would seem he'd be strong against magic damage as a crystal and strong against physical damage as a warden, similar to how Pantheon was a dragon guardian in set 1. However, units like Malzahar or Azir deal magic damage in constant DPS that easily avoids the problem of crystal's anti-burst, in comparison to units like Aurelion Sol in set 1 dealing 1000 magic damage in one big burst. Infernal, an extremely popular synergy, also counters crystal by turning mitigated damage into a fiery tile that spreads out the magic damage anyways. On another side, Warden is easily countered by Desert, a synergy that fits into many teams with Desert only needing 2 units to reduce armor by half. Lastly, Taric's ultimate is inconsistent. If he granted a shield or provided healing, he'd be a lot stronger. However, it's difficult to balance an AoE invulnerability ultimate. At his current state, he is too slow for a short duration and can be extremely hit or miss, which is bad for 5 costs. Most 5 costs should be consistent, like Singed Poison or Nami's powerful AoE ultimate. Taric, if he does get his ultimate off, might not even block that much damage as 3 seconds is extremely short. Ashe is also receiving buffs soon, so she might not be the worst any longer, but currently she's one of the weakest champions in the game. Firstly, crystals are quite underwhelming for reasons we explained earlier. There are too many synergies and champions that we don't care about. Secondly, her ultimate scales insanely bad. In comparison to Twitch, Kindred, or even Vayne, Ashe's ultimate doesn't really do much and is extremely underwhelming. In most cases, you will only run Ashe for 4 rangers and 2 crystals with Taric, but you should usually never put items on her as carries like Kindred or Twitch are far better. Crystals is a weak defensive synergy in comparison to Twitch, capable of applying AoE poison or Kindred with Shadow's Infernal. Skarner is next. Crystal units are just generally bad. We've discussed why Crystal doesn't work too well, so we won't repeat ourselves. However, Skarner being a 2-cost Crystal is extremely awkward. Crystal is more of a late game synergy. It'd be okay if Skarner was a good late game unit, but he is not. His ability grants him a shield that gives him attack speed. However, his shield is small, it can easily be broken, which essentially means he doesn't really gain attack speed either. If Skarner was a ranged unit, he'd be insanely strong, capable of protecting himself and gaining a lot of effectiveness with his attack speed. However, as a melee champion, his shield breaks easily, his attack speed bonus doesn't mean anything, and he's only really there for the synergies and to tank. He can be a decent way to get 3 Predators, but as a unit, he's not that great. Along with Ashe, Taric, and Taliyah, Skarner will also be receiving buffs next patch. Crystals overall are quite weak, but maybe with next patch's buffs, they might see a rise in play and strength. If their weaknesses are addressed, we might see a new team rise into the meta. Most of the champions here will be receiving a buff tomorrow, so keep an eye out to see if they're units to be avoided or the next strongest champion. That wraps up everything that you should avoid in teamfight tactics. We hope you enjoyed this video. What do you think is the most important thing to avoid? What are your opinions on weak champions getting buffs? Let us know in the comments below. Leave a like and subscribe, and we hope to see y'all next time.